Rain hit the city like silver needles that night, turning the streets of Chicago into mirrors of light. Inside the 32nd floor of Horizon Tower, Clara Beaumont, 35, the youngest female CEO in her company's history, was still working. Her office lights glowed against the dark skyline. 3 weeks ago, her life had changed completely. A car accident had left her with a broken leg and a long scar down her thigh. Since then, walking was a struggle, and she relied on crutches to move around. For someone like Clara, always strong, composed, and in control, that injury wasn't just physical. It had taken a piece of her confidence, too. She stared at her computer screen, her leg propped up, exhaustion clouding her mind. The building was nearly empty. Everyone had gone home before the storm began. She liked it this way, quiet. No one watching her struggle to move. But when the thunder rolled across the city and the lights flickered, her calm broke. The office went dark. Clara froze. The hum of machines stopped and her heart began to race. She reached for her phone, dead battery. She muttered under her breath, perfect timing. Then, from the hallway, came footsteps. Slow, echoing, "Hello," she called out. Her voice sounded smaller than she intended. No reply. The steps grew closer. Her pulse quickened. She couldn't even stand properly without her crutch. And the thought of being trapped in the dark office made her chest tighten. "Who's there?" she said again, trying to sound firm. A figure appeared at her doorway, tall, broad-shouldered, a faint outline against the dim city lights. "Please don't hurt me," she blurted out. I can't walk." The man stopped immediately. His voice came low and steady. "Ma'am, it's okay. I work here. I'm the maintenance guy. Name's Jack Harper." Clara exhaled in relief. "Maintenance." He nodded and stepped closer, careful not to alarm her. Power went out across 3 floors. "I'm here to check the wiring." Emergency lights flickered on, casting a warm glow on his face. He looked about mid-30s, rainwater dripping from his jacket. With kind brown eyes and the kind of quiet confidence that came from living through hard days. She felt foolish for being afraid. But the fear still lingered in her voice. "I didn't expect anyone else to be here this late." Jack smiled faintly. "I could say the same to you, ma'am. But I guess CEOs don't have a clock-out time." That earned a weak laugh from her. "Apparently not." He set down his toolbox and moved toward the circuit panel by her window. "You should sit tight. I'll have the power running in a few minutes." "Ah!" She watched him work in silence. He moved with precision, checking wires, tightening bolts, occasionally glancing up to make sure she was okay. He wasn't like the people she met in boardrooms. No arrogance, no rush. Just steady hands and quiet focus. When the lights came back, the entire floor glowed again. Jack turned to her. "They're good as new." Clara smiled. "Thank you. You just saved my night." "Glad to help," he said simply. Then, noticing her struggle to stand, he stepped forward. "Here, let me." She tried to wave him off. "No, I've got it," but as soon as she stood, her leg trembled. And she stumbled slightly. Jack caught her arm, steadying her gently. "Easy," he said, his tone calm and respectful. "You shouldn't put too much weight on it." Clara's cheeks flushed, more from frustration than embarrassment. "I hate this. I hate needing help." He smiled softly. "Everyone needs help sometimes. Even CEOs." That made her really laugh for the first time since the accident. She eased back into her chair, studying him. His jacket was soaked, his hands rough, but his eyes were kind. "Do you always work this late?" she asked. He shrugged. "When storms hit, yeah. Power lines don't care about my schedule. And your family. They don't mind." His expression softened. "It's just me and my daughter. She's 9. She'd probably be up watching cartoons right now." Clara leaned back, intrigued. "What's her name?" "Sophie. She's smart, stubborn, and already better at bossing me around than my old supervisor ever was." Clara smiled, picturing it. "She sounds like a handful." "She is," he said, laughing quietly. "But she's the best part of my day." It's the way he said it, not casually, but with warmth, struck something inside Clara. It had been so long since she'd heard someone speak about family with love instead of obligation. Minutes passed easily between them. They talked about the storm, the city, little pieces of their lives. He told her how his wife had passed away years ago, and how he'd been raising Sophie alone. "I'm not perfect at it," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "But she tells me I make good pancakes, so I guess I'm doing okay." Clara found herself smiling again. "You sound like a good dad." He looked down, almost shy, trying to be. The building creaked as thunder rolled again. She glanced toward the window. "Looks like the storm isn't done yet." "No," he said, "and if it gets worse, the streets will flood. You might be stuck here a while." "It's fine," she replied. "I've got reports to finish anyway." Jack looked at her leg and frowned. "You should be resting, not working." She smirked. "That's easy to say when you're not responsible for 200 employees." He chuckled. "Fair enough." When she tried to move her crutch again, he noticed her wince. "Does it still hurt a lot?" She nodded. "Every step reminds me I'm not invincible anymore." "Maybe that's not a bad thing," he said quietly. She looked at him. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "Sometimes we move so fast trying to be strong that we forget we're still human. Slowing down doesn't mean giving up." Clara was silent. No one had spoken to her like that before. Not an employee, not even friends. Most people were careful around her, intimidated by her title. Jack talked to her like he saw past it. It stirred something unexpected inside her, a warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. After a while, he checked the last panel and packed up his tools. Power should stay stable now. "Thank you, Jack." "Really?" she said. "You didn't have to stay this long." He shrugged. "Can't leave someone stranded in the dark. My daughter would scold me for that." Clara smiled. "You sound like you raised her right." He laughed softly. "I'm trying. Maybe she's the one raising me." As he turned to leave, she hesitated. Something in her chest didn't want him to go. The room felt lighter with him there, calmer. "Jack," she called out before he reached the door. He turned back. My apartment's in the same building. The wiring there has been acting strange since the accident. Would you mind checking it tomorrow?" He smiled, a small, kind smile that made her pulse quicken unexpectedly. "Sure, tomorrow after work. I'll bring coffee. Black, or do you take cream?" "Black," she said quickly, smiling back. "Thanks. See you then," he said, and with that, he disappeared down the hall. The office fell quiet again, but the silence felt different. Softer somehow. Clara leaned back, staring out the window as the rain slowed. Her heart was still unsteady, but not from fear this time. For the first time since her accident, she didn't feel alone. She didn't know much about Jack Harper, except that he was kind, patient, and very real in a world that often wasn't. And deep down, she felt that the man who walked into her office that stormy night hadn't just fixed the lights. He had unknowingly repaired something far more fragile, the part of her that had forgotten how to feel again. The next morning, the storm had cleared, leaving Chicago washed clean and bright. The sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Horizon Tower. But Clara's mind was still replaying the night before, the way Jack had spoken to her with warmth and honesty, without fear of her title or status. For the first time in months, she had slept without waking from pain or worry. There was something about his presence, quiet, grounded, real, that stayed with her. By the time she reached her apartment later that afternoon, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number read, "Jack Harper here. Just finishing up at the tower. Still okay if I come by to check the wiring?" Clara smiled at the text before replying. "Yes. Come any time after 6. At exactly 6:05, a soft knock echoed at her door. She opened it to find him standing there, same calm smile, toolbox in hand. His shirt sleeves rolled to his elbows. "Evening, Ms. Beaumont," he said politely. "Clara," she corrected gently. "If you're going to fix my place, at least call me by my name." He chuckled. "All right, Clara, it is." Her apartment was modern, spotless, and quiet. Too quiet. He noticed the crutches leaning against the wall, the untouched piano near the window, and a stack of unopened letters on the counter. "You live alone?" he asked while kneeling near the electrical panel. "Yes, always have," she said. "Company feels complicated." "Sometimes," he replied, testing the wires. "But sometimes company's what keeps you from falling apart." She looked at him curiously. "Is that how it was for you and Sophie?" He smiled softly. "Yeah. After her mom passed, I thought I had to be strong for her. But I learned something. Sometimes strength is letting someone see when you're not okay." That line lingered in her mind long after he said it. Jack moved around her apartment, checking outlets and fixtures. His movements were efficient but gentle, never intrusive. Clara followed him, trying not to stare but unable to help it. There was something comforting about him, the kind of comfort that didn't need words. When he finished, he turned to her. "You've got an old breaker. I'll need to replace it, but it'll take a few days to order the part." "No rush," she said, smiling. "Honestly, I don't mind if you have to come back." He caught the teasing tone in her voice and smiled too. "I'll take that as a compliment." Before leaving, he noticed her trying to reach something on the top shelf of her kitchen. Without a word, he stepped forward, grabbed the jar, and placed it on the counter. "Thanks," she said, embarrassed. "I'm not used to being limited." He leaned on the counter. "You'll walk again, Clara. Just give it time." She nodded quietly, her eyes softening. "You sound so sure. I've seen people come back from worse. You've got the kind of will most people would break under." For a moment, the air between them shifted. Not romantic, not yet, but deeply human. She hadn't realized how much she needed someone to believe in her again. He packed up his tools and paused at the door. "By the way, Sophie's been asking why I was fixing wires at midnight. I told her I was helping someone important." Clara smiled. "Tell her I said thank you for lending her dad." That made him laugh. "I'll tell her." She liked that. When he left, the apartment felt emptier than before. Clara sat by the window, watching the lights of the city flicker below, thinking about the man who treated her not like a CEO, not like a patient, but like a person. Over the next few weeks, Jack came by often, sometimes to check the wiring, sometimes to drop off coffee, and sometimes just because Sophie had baked too many cookies. Each visit became something Clara quietly looked forward to. He'd tell stories about Sophie, how she wanted to become an astronaut, how she'd built a cardboard spaceship in their living room, how she made him wear a tinfoil helmet for safety. Clara laughed more in those moments than she had in months. Sometimes. She'd share stories, too, about her early days struggling to build her company, about how success had come with a cost she hadn't seen coming. Loneliness. Jack listened without judgment. He didn't try to fix her problems, just heard them. One evening, as he replaced the breaker box, Sophie appeared at the door with a small pink umbrella in hand. "Dad," she called, "you forgot your lunchbox again?" Clara smiled as Jack laughed. "Sophie, I told you not to run in the rain." Sophie looked up at Clara shyly. "Hi, you're the lady who can't walk good yet, right?" Clara laughed softly. "That's me." Sophie tilted her head. "You'll get better. My dad says strong people always do." "Oh, no." Jack groaned. "She overhears everything." Clara smiled warmly. "Well, your dad's right." Sophie looked proud. "He usually is." That moment melted something in Clara's heart. She hadn't realized how long it had been since laughter filled her home. After Sophie left, Clara turned to Jack. "She's amazing. You must be proud." "I am," he said, his eyes softening. "She keeps me grounded. I think she's the reason I still know how to smile." Clara's expression grew tender. "I envy that. Having someone who makes life simpler." He shook his head. "It's not simpler, just more meaningful." She looked at him quietly, understanding more in that single sentence than she could have through 100 board meetings. Weeks turned into months. Her legs slowly healed. With therapy, she began walking short distances again. Jack kept visiting, helping when she needed it, cheering when she took her first steps without crutches. "You did it," he said one morning, his voice full of pride. "I did," she said. tears of relief welling in her eyes. "But I couldn't have without your help." He shook his head. "You would have done it either way. I just reminded you you're not alone." She looked at him, her heart swelling with quiet gratitude. There were moments, short, fleeting ones, where their eyes met a little too long, where silence carried meaning that neither dared to voice. Still, neither crossed the line. She was still healing, not just her leg, but her trust. And Jack respected that one Friday evening after another long day at work. Clara stopped by Jack's maintenance office to drop off some papers he had left upstairs. He wasn't there, but Sophie was sitting on a stool, coloring. "Hi, Sophie," Clara said gently. "Is your dad around?" Sophie shook her head. "He went to fix the elevator. He'll be back soon." Clara sat down beside her. "What are you drawing?" Sophie grinned and turned the paper around. "It's you, my dad, and me on the beach. You're walking without your crutch." Clara's throat tightened. "That's beautiful." Sophie nodded proudly. "Dad said when you get better, you should come to the lake with us this summer. We make sandcastles." Clara smiled through a sudden rush of emotion. "I'd like that very much." Just then, Jack returned, surprised to find her there. "Clara, everything okay?" She smiled softly. "Just came to deliver this. And to thank your assistant here for the best drawing I've seen in years." Jack smiled, then looked at his daughter. "Sophie, maybe you should frame that one." As the three of them stood there, one man, one woman, and one bright child between them, something unspoken filled the air. It wasn't love yet, not in the romantic sense. But it was connection, raw, genuine, and rare. Clara left soon after, but as she walked away, she realized her limp felt lighter, her heart steadier. Maybe recovery wasn't just about healing her leg. Maybe it was about rediscovering the parts of herself she'd buried, the parts that still believed in kindness, family, and second chances. And though neither of them said it aloud, both Jack and Clara knew their story was far from over. Winter had melted into spring, and for the first time in a long while, Clara Beaumont could walk without her cane. The air felt softer, lighter, almost like the city itself had shifted. She stood outside her office window, watching the river glisten under the afternoon sun. Life at Horizon Tower had returned to its normal rhythm: meetings, reports, numbers. But something inside her had changed. Jack Harper had become a part of her life in quiet ways. He still worked in the building as a maintenance supervisor, but lately their worlds kept finding excuses to meet. A flickering hallway light, a delivery mix-up, a broken heater, and somehow his name always came up. But it wasn't the excuses that made her heart flutter anymore. It was the comfort she felt when he was near, the sense that, for once, someone saw her, not the CEO, not the woman who had once begged through pain, but the person beneath the title. That afternoon, as she packed up her papers, her phone buzzed with a message. "Jack, Lake Michigan's calm today. Sophie and I are going for a walk. You're welcome to join." For a moment, she hesitated. She hadn't gone out just for herself in months. But something in that message, the easy warmth of it, made her want to try. "Clara, give me 30 minutes. I'll be there." By the time she arrived at the lakeshore, the sun had dipped low, painting the sky with streaks of gold and pink. Jack was there, tossing a pebble across the water with Sophie, who laughed as it skipped. When Clara approached, Sophie waved excitedly. "You came. I promised I'd see that sandcastle, didn't I?" Clara said, smiling. Sophie grinned. "Then let's make one big enough to keep seagulls out." Jack chuckled. "That's ambitious, kiddo." As they began shaping wet sand, Clara found herself laughing, really laughing, the kind that made her cheeks ache. Her expensive shoes were caked with sand, her hair whipped by the wind. But she didn't care. When Sophie ran off to collect seashells, Jack turned to her. "You look happy." "I am," she said quietly. "I forgot what that felt like." He watched her for a moment. "You've come a long way, Clara. From the night I met you, scared and hurting, to this, you're standing strong." She smiled softly. "You helped me remember how." There was a pause between them, gentle, unspoken. Then she asked, "Do you ever miss your wife?" He nodded slowly. Every day. But I've learned missing someone doesn't mean life stops. It means you carry what they gave you and you try to give it forward. That's beautiful, she said. He shrugged, smiling. Maybe, or maybe it's just how I survive. Their eyes met. And for a heartbeat, the world went quiet, no wind. Number waves, no noise, just two people, both broken in different ways, finding something that felt whole between them. The days that followed became a blur of small, meaningful moments. Coffee shared in the lobby. Lunch breaks in the park. Simple texts that said, "You okay?" And "Don't forget to eat." They never labeled what they had. It wasn't a romance yet, but it wasn't just friendship either. It was a connection that didn't need definition. It just was. One evening, Clara invited them both to her apartment for dinner as a thank you for everything they'd done. Jack tried to refuse, but Sophie insisted. "You said good people say thank you properly, Dad. Let's go." That night, her apartment glowed with laughter and warmth. Sophie spilled juice on the table, Jack burned the garlic bread, and Clara, for the first time in her life, didn't care that things weren't perfect. After Sophie went to the balcony to look at the city lights, Jack turned to Clara. "You've built something amazing here. Not just this place, your company, your life." Clara looked around the elegant room, then back at him. "It's strange. I've built everything I thought I wanted, and yet it never felt this full until now." He smiled gently. "Sometimes it's not what we build, it's who we build it with." Something shifted inside her then, something quiet and powerful. She had spent years proving she could stand on her own. But maybe, just maybe, strength could also mean letting someone stand beside you. Weeks later, Clara surprised Sophie at school with a visit. She brought flowers for her art teacher and stayed for the class exhibition. Sophie's drawing caught her attention immediately. A picture of a woman walking beside a man and a little girl. Underneath it, the words, "People who fix each other's broken parts." Clara's heart clenched. When Jack arrived later, he saw her standing there, emotional. "She drew us," Clara whispered. "All three of us." Jack looked at the picture and smiled. "Looks like she sees something we're too careful to say." Clara looked up at him. "And what if she's right?" He took a slow breath. "Then maybe it's time we stop being careful." The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was warm, deep, and full of meaning. That weekend, they drove out to a quiet park on the edge of the city. The spring air carried the scent of fresh grass and blooming lilacs. Sophie ran ahead, chasing butterflies while Jack and Clara walked behind her. "I used to think love was weakness," Clara said quietly. "That it distracted you, made you soft. And now?" he asked. "Now I think it's the only thing that makes people stronger." Jack smiled. "You sound like someone who's figured out what she wants." She stopped walking, turning to face him. "I think I have." For a moment, neither spoke. Then she reached for his hand, hesitant at first, then firm. Jack looked down at her hand in his, then back into her eyes. "You're sure about this, Clara?" She nodded, her voice steady. "For the first time, yes." He smiled, that simple, genuine smile that had disarmed her since the day they met. "Then I guess this is where our story really begins." Sophie's voice echoed from the distance. "Dad." "Clara, look. Two ducks." They both laughed, the tension breaking, the world suddenly lighter. They walked forward hand in hand, catching up with her, the three of them silhouetted against the soft golden sky. Months passed. Life didn't become perfect. It became real. Clara continued leading her company, but she no longer worked until midnight. Jack still fixed things around the building, though now Clara often found excuses to check on maintenance. They spent weekends at the park, picnics by the lake, movie nights where Sophie would always fall asleep halfway through. Sometimes, Clara would look at them this simple, small family she had stumbled into and wonder how she had ever lived without it. One evening, as they sat watching a summer storm through the window, Clara whispered, "Do you remember the night we met?" Jack smiled. "Hard to forget. You looked ready to fire me." She laughed softly. "And you looked like someone who didn't care who I was." I didn't, he said honestly. I just cared that you were okay. She leaned her head on his shoulder. You fixed more than wires that night, Jack, he smiled, wrapping an arm around her. And you fixed more than you know. Sighed. Thunder rolled across the sky, but inside, everything was calm, the kind of calm that comes when broken souls find the courage to heal together. A year later, Clara stood on a small pier at the same lake where it had all begun. Her company had just launched its biggest project, and she'd decided to celebrate not with champagne or headlines, but with the people who had given her life meaning. Jack stood beside her, Sophie between them, holding both their hands. Think you'll ever stop working so hard? Jack teased. Not a chance. She smiled. But now I know what I'm working for. Sophie looked up. What's that? Clara smiled at her, then at Jack. For the people who make it all worth it. They stood there, the waves lapping gently at their feet, the city lights twinkling in the distance. It wasn't a fairy tale ending, it was better. It was real. And as the night settled around them, Clara realized something beautiful. The pain that had once made her beg for help had led her here. To this quiet, steady kind of happiness. Not dramatic, not loud, just right.